There are games that entertain you. And then there are games that change the conversation permanently. What just happened against Italy was the second kind. Not because Team USA won. That was expected. But because of how they won when they won, and more specifically, because of who made it happen. If you still had doubts about where Caitlin Clark stands on this roster, this game didn't just answer that question. It buried it. Let's talk about what actually unfolded, because the full story is more compelling than the final score suggests. And once you see the numbers laid out clearly, you'll understand why this performance isn't just impressive. It's historically significant. Team USA walked onto that floor against Italy as one of the most talented collections of women's basketball players ever assembled. On paper, this game shouldn't have been close at any point. And yet, for a significant stretch of the first quarter, the score was tied. Not trailing by a little. Tied. The offense looked stiff. The ball movement was sluggish. The half-court sets were predictable, and Italy, a team that had no business being in this kind of game, was hanging around with complete confidence because nothing Team USA was running was creating any real pressure. And here's what makes that even more striking. The players on the floor during those slow stretches weren't role players. These were legitimate stars. Elite professionals who have proven themselves at the highest levels of the sport. And still, the offense looked like it was working against itself. Every possession felt forced. Every red felt a half-second late. Italy could see everything coming, and they were playing with the composure of a team that believed it had found the code. Then the substitution happened. Caitlin Clark checked into the game off the bench. What followed wasn't gradual. It wasn't a slow build where you start to notice things shifting over several possessions. It was almost immediate. The pace changed. The decision-making sharpened. The entire rhythm of Team USA's offense transformed in real time, right in front of everyone watching. The first thing Clark did was push tempo. She didn't wait for the half-court to set up. She was already reading Italy's defense before they had a chance to organize. By the time they got back, she had already made her decision. The ball started moving faster. The passes started arriving earlier. Players who had been standing still a few minutes before were suddenly getting the ball in rhythm, with space, and positions where they could actually do something with it. And then she pulled up from logo range and knocked down a deep three that changed the geometry of the entire defense. When a player can hit shots from that distance with that kind of confidence, defenses have no good answer. Italy had to extend their coverage all the way out to the arc and beyond. The moment they did, the lane opened. Pick-and-roll actions that had been generating nothing started creating real problems. The same offensive system that had looked broken suddenly looked unstoppable. Not because the plays changed, but because the player running them changed. Every time the pace started to slow again, Clark broke the stagnation. Not always with a highlight reel moment, but with sequences. A push and transition here, a perfectly timed pass to a cutter there, a step-back jumper that forced Italy's coaching staff to rethink their entire approach. The cumulative effect was suffocating for the Italian defense. By the time the final buzzer sounded, the score read 93-59, a 34-point blowout. Italy never recovered from that initial shift in momentum, and they spent the final 3 quarters simply trying to limit the damage. Clark's final line for the night: 12 points and 5 assists in 22 minutes off the bench. Looks solid when you read it quickly. But those numbers don't tell the full story. And if you only look at the box score, you'll miss what actually happened. The box score records the last pass before a basket. It doesn't record the drive that collapsed the defense 2 possessions earlier. It doesn't capture the read that forced the rotation that created the open corner 3. It doesn't reflect the presence of a player that forces a defense to make impossible choices on every single possession. Anyone watching live felt the difference the instant she stepped onto the floor. That kind of impact doesn't always show up cleanly in a stat sheet. But there is one number that comes closer than most to capturing it. While Clark was on the floor against Italy, Team USA outscored the opposition by 27 points. 27 points in just 22 minutes. When she was sitting on the bench, that number dropped by 11 points. Even with other stars in the game. Legitimate, proven, elite players. The team was measurably less dominant without Clark on the court. That's what plus-minus actually measures. It's not about individual scoring. It tracks every single thing that happens while a player is on the floor. Every stop, every basket, every possession in both directions. And the gap between Clark being on the court versus off the court was enormous. It's the kind of number that makes arguments difficult to sustain. And the Italy game didn't happen in isolation. Across the first 3 games of this tournament, Clark leads Team USA in assists. She's tied for the team lead in points. She leads the roster in free throws drawn, and her plus-minus is the highest number on the entire team, not second, first. Meaning Team USA has been more dominant in every measurable way, with Clark on the floor than with anyone else, including the players who have been in the starting lineup the entire tournament. Then zoom out even further, and the picture becomes even more striking. Across every team and every player competing in this entire qualifying tournament, not just Americans, every player from every country. Clark currently leads the field in plus-minus. She is, by that measure, the single most impactful player in the entire competition. And then there's the assist record. She has already recorded 19 assists through 3 games. That total broke the all-time record for assists in a single FIBA qualifying tournament. And she still has 2 games left to play in the event. Think about that for a moment. The record is already broken. The tournament isn't finished. All of that, by the way, has come while she's been coming off the bench. These are not the numbers of a player finding her footing or contributing in a supporting role. These are the numbers of the most influential player in the building, playing fewer minutes than the starters and still leading nearly every meaningful category. That's not a fan narrative. That's not media enthusiasm running ahead of the facts. Those are simply the numbers, and they point in one direction, which makes the coaching situation that developed around this team genuinely fascinating to talk about. After Clark's record-breaking debut, 17 points and 12 assists in 19 minutes against Senegal, the head coach addressed reporters and emphasized that this team needed everyone to contribute, not just one player. The comment didn't land well. The numbers were already telling a clear story, and that statement felt to a lot of people like a deflection from what was actually happening on the court. Then came the Puerto Rico game, and things got more complicated. Puerto Rico came out with a box-and-one defensive scheme built specifically to neutralize Clark. It was a smart tactical decision, and the right response was to adjust the offense to use her playmaking ability against that scheme. Because a box-and-one creates opportunities for the player being chased if the team around them knows how to exploit it. Instead, the offense largely bypassed Clark and ran through other players while she stayed on the perimeter. The result was one of the most uncomfortable offensive performances of the tournament. Clunky was the word Clark herself used to describe it afterward. Fans and analysts were loud in their reaction. The criticism was pointed. People weren't just frustrated with the outcome. They were questioning whether the coaching staff was fully seeing what was right in front of them. Then, Italy happened, and the bench was being managed differently. Phoenix Mercury head coach Nate Tibbetts handled the rotations against Italy. Under his approach, Clark was placed directly into the point guard role from the moment she entered the game. The offense was built around her decision-making rather than designed to work around it. The rotations were longer, giving lineups time to build chemistry and develop rhythm instead of disrupting flow with constant substitutions. The offense that had looked broken against Puerto Rico looked like a completely different system under that approach. The timing is impossible to ignore. Significant criticism follows a difficult game. A different coaching voice manages the bench. Clark is used as the primary playmaker. And the team wins by 34. Whether the original coach stepped back voluntarily, whether this was always part of the plan, or whether something shifted in the wake of the criticism is still an open question. But the connection between how Clark was used and how the team performed is no longer just a theory. It's documented on the scoreboard. The other development from the Italy game worth paying close attention to is the chemistry that's beginning to build between Clark and Paige-Bueckers. These two guards are starting to operate at the same speed, reading the same things at the same moment, anticipating each other before the play fully develops. Clark pushes the ball up the floor. Bueckers reads the defense on the move. The pass arrives before the help defender can recover. These are the kinds of connections that take time to develop between players from different teams and different systems. And they're already showing up in real games at a meaningful level. Tibbetts leaned into this by deploying a 3-guard lineup featuring Clark, Bueckers, and a third shooter alongside them. Italy had no answer. Every player in that lineup could push pace, make quick decisions, read a defense at full speed, and create offense in multiple ways. The defensive rotations Italy needed to stop one thing opened up something else. Every time they adjusted, the adjustment created a new problem. The simplest description of what that lineup did to Italy is this: it was too fast, too smart, and too connected for them to slow down. And here's why all of this matters beyond one tournament. Everything Clark is doing in this international competition carries directly back to her regular professional career. The decisions she's making under pressure against defenses she hasn't seen before. The chemistry she's building with teammates from different programs. The record she's breaking on an international stage. All of it sharpens a player in ways that standard practice and regular season games simply can't replicate. She will return from this tournament a more complete player than when she left. The reads will come faster. The decisions will arrive cleaner. The confidence that comes from performing at this level. from leading an entire international competition in the most meaningful statistical categories. Doesn't disappear when the tournament ends. It goes with her. And when you look at the full picture, leading the team in assists, tied for the scoring lead, the highest plus-minus on the roster, records already broken with games still remaining. The conversation becomes very hard to redirect. By every number that matters, she has been the most impactful player in this tournament. Not one of the most impactful, the most. And the most remarkable part of all of this is where we are right now. The tournament isn't over. There are still 2 games left to play. The records can still grow. The numbers can still build. The case, already compelling, can still get stronger. What we've watched over these first 3 games is something that doesn't come along often. A player performing at a historically unique level in high-pressure competition on the biggest stage available, and doing it while the debate about her place on the team is still happening in real time around her. She's not answering that debate with words. She's answering it with the scoreboard and the stat sheet game after game after game. That's the kind of player who changes the way a sport is talked about, not because of one great game, but because of the consistency of the performance and the weight of the evidence that keeps accumulating. The arguments aren't gone yet. They never fully disappear in sports. But they're getting harder to make. In 2 games from now, they might be nearly impossible to sustain. If you've been watching this tournament and feeling like you were witnessing something genuinely special, you're not wrong. What's happening right now is worth paying attention to. Drop a comment below and tell us what you think. Is Caitlin Clark the best and most impactful player on this Team USA roster right now? Because the numbers have already made their argument. Now we want to hear yours. If this breakdown was worth your time, hit the like button and share it with someone who loves the game. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because if these last 3 games are any indication, the final 2 could be something we're still talking about for a long time. The stage is set. The numbers are historic. And she still has 2 more games to play.